Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, addressing all aspects of the digital enterprise, inspiring connection without boundaries and creation without limits. Thank you for tuning in. Here are your hosts, Thom Singer and Craig Brown.
This is the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Thank you so much for coming along on the journey of this show that was designed to be a resource for those who work in and around PLM. The Digital Enterprise Society is a forum for the exchange of ideas surrounding the tools, processes, and practices used across the product lifecycle. To learn more, jump over to our website, digitalenterprisesociety.org. My name is Thom Singer, and I have the honor to co-host this show with Craig Brown. Craig is an industry veteran and former PLM leader at General Motors. Hey, Craig, how are you today?
Hey, I'm great. It's almost feels like we're returning to normal. I've been to several conferences now, and even one in Korea, which is new for me. I've never been there before. And it's interesting to see how the world is learning to live with our challenges with the pandemic, and I guess you'd now call it an endemic. But it's also interesting to see how people handle it differently. And maybe we need a podcast series on that, but that's not related to digital engineering. Anyway,
well, it is.
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Thom? I hear you got a new challenge there in Austin.
I do. I took on a new job as the CEO of the Austin Technology Council. So this is a 30-year-old tech organization serving the entire ecosystem of technology in Austin, Texas. And so I'm having a lot of fun getting my feet wet with this community and looking for ways that we can serve the technology community in Central Texas going forward. So, but I'm still here with you, Craig. I'm not leaving you.
Well, and I have some input for the guys moving their companies to Central Texas. So if you ever want to interview me for that, just let me know. But maybe another time.
Awesome. That's another venue. But every single week, Craig and I try to bring to all of you who are listening really interesting interviews and ideas that are going to help all of you enhance your career and think differently all around everything PLM and beyond. And today we are welcoming back to the show, Patrick Hillberg. Hey, Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hi, Thom. Hi, Craig. Nice to be here again. So I enjoy your podcast.
Well, we're so glad to have you back. And for those of you who don't remember Patrick from when he was here before, he is an adjunct professor at Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan. That's right near Detroit. And before that, he was the academic and workforce lead at Siemens PLM. And even before that, he was the lead architect at Siemens PLM, where he led teams for big PLM installations. So this has been your world for a long time, right, Patrick?
Yes, it has most definitely. So I enjoy PLM, and I kind of enjoyed that career path. I particularly enjoy it, to Craig's point about attending a conference. I hosted a small part of a conference a couple of weeks ago for STEM educators and really talking about the fourth industrial revolution. And we brought in some PLM and that sort of thing. So it is nice to get back in front of people again. So.
Well, good. Well, Craig, I'm going to turn this over to you, and we can have another great interview with Patrick.
So we guys in the car industry, a lot of times we get accused of not paying attention to economic forces. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. I think more than many industries, we pay attention to economics. But I got wind, Patrick, of a paper you're writing, and I saw a draft of it. And I think it's eye-opening to think about the economic side of product development, but also its implications to PLM. And so the paper, if I may tell everybody, is what if gasoline were $100 a gallon? It's bad enough at $5. What do you want it at $100 for? But anyways, so sustainability is becoming a really big deal, and a lot of people don't think about it. I mean, part of it's our busy lives, but maybe another part of it is the pandemic has given us pause to think about maybe the side effects of some of our decisions. And so, anyways, I liked your paper. I wanted to ask you a few questions, but I want to get to the point on digital engineering. So why don't you give me a couple of your key points about what drives economies and this point about externalities you talk about. So give us a couple of those points, and then I'll get you back to digital engineering.
Sure. And for what it's worth, I almost called the paper "What if oil was minus $20 a barrel, right? So, which it actually was for a while, about 2 years ago. And my real point on setting this up is, what if demand for oil diminishes drastically? And one way to do that we can all just look at and understand is, if the price of gasoline is $100 a gallon, then its demand will diminish drastically. So in my class and in this paper, I take my engineers through about 1 week of Economics 101. And we talk about capitalism, we talk about Adam Smith, and the definition of capitalism, according to this online textbook out of Oxford, is there's 3 tenets. It has private property, markets, and firms. So, and if you think of free market capitalism, this is how we manage product life cycles. Is we have a free market, and corporations, which are firms, bring their products into the market so that people can purchase those products as private property. So all this started out, I mean, this happened prior to Adam Smith writing The Wealth of Nations, but he wrote it in 1776. And actually that year becomes really critical in kind of the forward history of humanity. So your other question is, what are externalities? And I bring that up. And externalities are the costs associated to the transaction that are not borne by either the producer or the consumer. And we'll see if this happens, because I'm giving this talk from my house, and I never know when the leaf blowers are going to show up at my neighbor's house.
And they have?
Oh yeah. So,
well, I can't hear them, so go ahead.
Oh no, they're not here now. They're not here now. Although,
okay.
Actually, I was doing something similar with the author John Stark. I was interviewing him a couple of years ago, and we'd spent 2 or 3 weeks figuring out what we were going to talk about and that sort of thing. In just 3 minutes before the Zoom call, suddenly the leaf blower showed up. So but my commentary on the leaf blowers is, that's a negative impact on me for a financial transaction that I have nothing to do with. So there's negative value placed on my house and my property. I mean, if I'm outside reading and the blowers and the mowers show up, suddenly I need to go inside, even though I'm not associated with that contract. So that's a pretty simple case that at least in summertime we see as an external cost. But of course, those mowers and blowers, which are gasoline, they're also emitting they're using fossil fuels, and they're emitting greenhouse gases up into the atmosphere, and the greenhouse gases will last for tens of thousands of years. So there's not only an impact on me during the time that the noise is going on, but there's an impact on not only the humans that are alive today, but the humans that will be born into the future.
Well, isn't this part of, I'm a student of Adam Smith. I absolutely agree with one exception, which is we don't really understand the property ownership. If we owned the toxic gases we produced, right? If we understood that as a part of the equation, we might actually make better decisions. And it's hard now that we're more scientific, 250 years later, and we're able to measure this stuff. We're beginning to have an appreciation for the broader impacts, right? So I'm kind of curious what you think. What would Adam Smith say now when we understand the impact of property ownership, when that includes the air pollution and the water pollution that comes as a result of all this?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because it was so small. I mean, so there's 3 things that happened in 1776 that were really impactful. One is the Wealth of Nations. One is the invention of the steam engine, and the other, of course, is the Declaration of Independence. Yeah. So,
our way of life, really.
Right, right. We've never had democratic capitalism without fossil fuels. Right. So, and eventually I'll get to this point of how are we going to do that? So in 1776, there was so little in terms of greenhouse gas emissions that I don't think Adam Smith even recognized it. And really, it's not until the last maybe 40 or 50 years that people have started to realize that we're putting enough greenhouse gases into the atmosphere that it's actually having an impact. Smith was interesting in that he did recognize some of the limitations to what he talked about in Wealth of Nations. And one of the things he talked about was that if 4 or 5 producers go out to the local pub, they're going to try and figure out how to fix prices in one way or another. So
Right.
even he recognized those issues. So anyway, so capitalism has been huge in the last 250 years in terms of advancing human society. I mean, we have less poverty now than there has ever been in human history, but particularly over the last 30 to 50 years, we're starting to see the externalities take effect. So we're having to deal with the externalities, the external costs of what we're doing.
And some of them we caused, and some of them, I mean, if we had a volcano eruption, all of a sudden our contribution to warming gases would be puny compared to what Mother Nature could do. And so, and I'm not trying to downplay what we've done. We need to be responsible for what we've done, but maybe we could just be smarter about it all, right? So sustainability has come up a couple of places that just surprised me. My friends at SimData did an independent survey of all the people they work with. So these are industrial companies and solution providers like Siemens. Well, they're not called PLM anymore, but where you came from originally in your career, Patrick. And it was interesting. Most of those leaders acknowledged that sustainability was now in their top three, that it needed to be addressed, that we needed to understand it. And of course, the solution providers were pointing out, and we can help. And this is where digital engineering comes in, right? We can simulate effects, we can understand possible side effects, and so we could make better decisions, more balanced decisions, if you will. Well, that was the first forum. This was in March. They did the survey around January. And then I was surprised at the INCOSE conference this year. So this is the International Council of System Engineering. This was a major theme, and they held their annual conference this time in Detroit. And a lot of the people spoke. A lot of them are from the nuclear Navy, so submarines and other ships that have nuclear reactors. But a lot of them are also systems thinkers about what we're doing to the world and what we should do differently. And of course, electric vehicles can offset carbon emissions from vehicles. So that's a piece of the puzzle. As long as you figure out how you're going to get all the raw material to go into an electric vehicle in some way it's green. The best answer would be a waterfall that generates electricity without burning anything, right? And then somehow you can store the energy until you need it in order to dig dirt out of a mine and make a lithium something or other, right? So I think sustainability is here, and I kind of liked what you did in this paper about talking about that point, and also redefining PLM. And I'd like you to introduce, how did you redefine PLM? Because I think us digital engineers, we need to think about this really hard. So how should PLM evolve?
Right. So product lifecycle management. Actually, the phrase product lifecycle first appeared in the Harvard Business Review in the 1960s. So there was a term there that went way beyond CAD and way beyond databases and that sort of thing. However, PLM has become pretty focused on the databases which manage CAD, and then there's some extrapolation out of that, but it's a very technical thing. I've started using MPL, meaning
hang on a second.
Sure.
Why did this help our audience? Why did PLM come focused on just the filing cabinet that held CAD files? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, that's where the money was, among other
things, right? Perfect. That's all I need you to say.
So,
everybody listening, it's manufacturing desires for efficiency, which comes from lots of places, okay, including Adam Smith. And the point is, it's all about where you spend the capital money to reinvest in a plant. Well, what matters is the changing design. And so, keeping records in a database. And so, yeah, it should not be, right? And I think that's where you're going to go. Product lifecycle management. Those are three simple words, and it's pretty clear what they mean if you look them up in a dictionary. And yet we became a filing cabinet for CAD files.
Yeah,
it needs to be so much more, right?
It does.
So what's the new term we should use?
Well, let me briefly say on this, which will be my launch, is PLM doesn't tell you if you're making the wrong product. You can be very efficient at making all the products that are, the medical and the aerospace and the automotive and the shipbuilding and all these things. You can become much more efficient using the technology. But if you're making the wrong product, then PLM, the technology, is not going to help you with that. So I really push towards that in terms of, actually, I take my class through this of what are the jobs to be done by an automobile. And you look outside my classroom window and you can see the Stellantis headquarters, right? So most of my students are all in the automotive business. And what are the jobs to be done by an automobile? And it's not to drive from place to place. The job to be done is what happens at the destination. So I go to work, I go to school, I buy groceries and those sorts of things.
When I was growing up, it was about going down Broadway and showing off.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a pretty old guy, but it was very little about going from point A to point B because I ended up where I started from. I just needed to make a scene, right?
I should tell you, and I know you're from the Detroit area. I live in Birmingham, Michigan, just a mile from Woodward.
Yeah, okay.
What you're talking about goes on every weekend, so and more.
So to your point, though, what's it for? And if it's for showing off, it's really different than its utilitarian service of going from point A to point B, right?
Right. Yeah. So there's actually, and I know you guys know Mike Greaves, and I teach my course based on a book that he wrote. And he goes into 5 different dimensions of value. And now you're putting me on the spot because I can't remember all of them. But there's economic value, which is, it costs me less to buy this thing than the value that I can get out of it. But there's also social value. So what you're talking about. So as the people are cruising up and down Woodward, which is near me, they're certainly getting a lot of social value, and they buy expensive cars and they put in big radios and all that sort of thing, really to for the social value of it. So,
right.
However, during the pandemic, actually the Woodward Dream Cruise unofficially still went on, but during the pandemic, we learned how to do things without driving to each other's place to do that. So, right. Craig and I are somewhere in the same town together, but we're not here personally. Thom is in Austin, Texas. I have a regular meeting with every week with somebody who's in Lagos, Nigeria. He's connected me to somebody that's in Finland, and I'm connected with people in the Netherlands and England and that sort of thing too. So I have regular conversations with these people, frequently via Zoom calls, who unfortunately I probably will never meet in person. I hope I do at some point, but we can have pretty valid relationships even without transportation. So then I get a little bit into disruption and disruptive innovation in my class, and the point that I make is that the transportation industries have been disrupted by Zoom. In fact, the hotel industry and the restaurant industry and the convention industry was disrupted by Zoom and continues to be disrupted, at least to some extent, by Zoom.
And Zoom itself is a digital technology, right? If we didn't have computers and cameras and microphones, even what we're doing right now, we wouldn't be doing, right? We'd be doing it some other way. Thom and I'd be traveling around the country like we used to with a microphone and talk to them live. Well, this is almost
that
live.
That would actually be a lot of fun. So
yeah,
again, someday. But yeah, so digital technologies disrupt. They can also replace other things. And your point here about replacing the need to physically move to see each other is a really good one. How does that change PLM? Take me down that journey. Where does PLM need to go to? It's too product focused. It wasn't focused on sustainability. It's very clear. Is there a better way to think about this?
Well, again, when I switch things to managing, so PLM is certainly needed, but I think there's also a managing product lifecycle. And managing product lifecycle gets to, are we building the products that bring value to society? And I don't even say, do we bring the products that customers want to buy? I think there's a little difference between what customers currently want to buy and what will bring value to society at some point in the future. And that once again gets to the external costs. And quite frankly, let's see the latency or the delay. I mean, the carbon that my parents emitted into the atmosphere the day I was born is still there and will still be there for another 10,000 years. So there's...
Yeah, and we didn't know that even maybe I mean, maybe some scientists knew it 10 years ago, but we as a public didn't know that. I think we as a public, a lot of us acknowledge it. Some people are still in denial, but a lot of us now acknowledge, oh yeah, we've really done this. Look at any coastal area, or the flip side, these great reservoirs we have in the Western United States that provide water to everything west of Colorado.
Yeah.
And all the reservoirs are drying up. I mean, holy mackerel. What we assumed for 200 years is no longer true. And
Right.
engineers, I mean, we are the ones that create the future. We just need to acknowledge the problem and get on with this broader understanding, and then we'll do better. So you said it, but I want to emphasize it. You said managing product life cycles. I really like the way you inverted PLM to MPL. And maybe that's what we need. We need a new acronym. And when you talk to people, we say life cycle, that's the noun now. Product is the adjective, and we're going to manage it, right? And so all of a sudden, maybe we take this broader view, this sustainability view, if we talk about that. So I like the term. Where are you going to go with it? Good. How are you going to get it out?
I know. I was going to say, well, I need you. I need to repeat it around.
While we're here.
in the social groups that I'm in, the professional social groups I am, we're all trying to figure this out. We all recognize the fact that PLM has become a very technical topic, and we're missing the business aspect of it. One of my colleagues is using business lifecycle management, but the acronym is BLM, which is the same as Black Lives Matter, and that acronym is taken, right? I mean that's a very
also
important
means
topic.
The Bureau of Land Management, but who's counting? Right?
Oh yeah, right, exactly.
If you go out west, you'll find a lot of BLM land.
It's funny because you talked about that. I was in Denver last week, and it was literally 100 degrees. And in Mile High City, it was 100 degrees, and in Tulsa, which is a little bit south of us, was 115 degrees for days. So, and you talked about the lowering of particularly Lake Mead in Nevada, and there's all the water that is not being used, that's not available for the food that is grown off of Lake Mead. So quite
there's two things we get out of Lake Mead. There's a lot of power, or we used to get a lot of power, and we got fresh vegetables, right? And both are being impacted. So and turbines turned by water don't produce carbon dioxide. I mean, it is smart what our founder or our predecessors did 150 years ago, thinking about all that stuff and planning. But now it doesn't work if we don't have a snowpack, right?
And I'll give fossil fuels some credit that it's a very dense pack of energy. If only the carbon didn't warm the air, right? For just a few pounds, I can drive for 100 miles. So we really don't have that. And this is something else I kind of get to in this paper that I'm writing, is I'm concerned about mobile power in general, that if we don't have fossil fuel energy, we're pretty much limited to for mobile power, we're pretty much limited to chemical batteries. And there's an article I wrote for the World Economic Forum where we talk about, cooperated with a student, which is just loads of fun for me. His name is Sawyer Hall. What was my point? So we get to this point with batteries, that the batteries in automobiles will be in competition for the batteries that we need to run our lights at night. So in fact, we titled the article EVs or TVs, electric vehicles or televisions. And you're going to hit this point where people need to make a decision as to whether or not, go ahead.
Well, no. So your point's a really good one, but I'm thinking about the current Ford commercial, right? The F-150, the electric F-150. During the day, it gets you to work. At night, it powers your house. I mean, I got to admire to those guys. They are hitting the nail on the head. At some point, you plug it into the network somewhere to get recharged, but they don't talk about that so much. They don't talk about how you keep your house running, right?
In the course of doing that article, that was one of the things we found, was that somebody, I think it was ABB, but it doesn't really matter. They said we probably need batteries on the grid in order to charge the batteries when people come home at night. So the amount of power available when people come home at 5 o'clock isn't enough to recharge their vehicles for the next day. So we're going to need to put batteries on the grid in order to charge the other batteries in people's cars.
But they're not going to go to work 9 to 5 anyways, because we've just had Zoom disrupt us so that we can work any time of the day we want, but hopefully only 8 hours a day, which is a whole other problem.
Which gets back to the job to be done. And
Yeah.
if we know, so one of the things I bring up is, okay, you've got mom and dad each have their own jobs working from home. She goes in Monday, Wednesday, he goes in Tuesday, Thursday, and instead of needing 2 cars in the garage, they only need 1 car in the garage.
Yeah.
So now suddenly the market for automobiles has dropped by half.
Yeah.
That's
right.
And I think these are the things that we're going to be wrestling with. And go ahead. And
so here we are in the Digital Enterprise Society. Help us think about this. How do we think broader? I mean, you're right. For so long, we thought about products, and then we thought about products efficiently because PLM was really about manufacturing efficiency, at least in the car business, right? But now we're talking about sustainability. What do digital engineers need to do? What do they need to get better at so that we engineer out of these problems in the future?
One of the things I see is really hopeful, actually, is the skills of digital engineering are very transferable between products. So once you learn CAD design and you learn change management and you learn collaboration and you learn how to check stuff in and check stuff out, whether you're doing it for a car or for a train or for something I'm really big on right now are vertical farms. The idea of locally growing the food within 1,000 miles of where it's consumed, right? So those skills are very transferable. And as a matter of fact, there was a story a couple of years ago that some of the engineers who were being laid off from Airbus in the very early days of COVID immediately went to work for the Hyperloop company that I think shared a driveway with them or shared a parking lot, right? So from a digital engineering standpoint, quite frankly, there's a lot of hope here that people that these skills are just immediately transferable.
So part of that, so transferable skills, but also speed of product development, because in a world that's under this kind of stress, both the pandemic and now more and more awareness of sustainability, I think people are realizing, well, we still need products, we still need to do what it is we're going to do, but we need to bring the skills to the right place. And maybe it's no longer bending metal that matters as much as it does how do we efficiently handle whatever the raw resources are, from lithium to sodium or whatever else, cobalt, we're going to put into these batteries. And, I bring up the minerals that people talk about for cars now. Your earlier point about how compact gasoline is or any carbon-based fuel, that's really the trick with batteries, is how do you get the power density, what we call it in engineering, enough power in a cubic foot of space so that it can be a reasonable range. And batteries are going to get there. There's enough smart people thinking about it. But I know the ones I talk to all use digital engineering techniques, from simulation to optimization technologies and all other kinds of things. It's interesting, and it's interesting to see the electronics world kind of joining with the mechanical world. And your point is right. There are skills, simulation skills, that both worlds need in order to be great digital engineers. So give us a closing thought that'll make us want to find your paper.
Got it. Okay.
So I really like the fact that you read it or wrote it. I read it, and I also like the fact that you're defining this term MPL.
Cool.
Why should we read your paper? Tell me more.
So I do think that you put me on the spot here a little bit. I wasn't prepared for that question. So
sorry about that.
No, you know what it is? I'm sure you guys do some writing as well. You just write stuff because it's in your head and you just hope somebody reads it, right? So you don't even think about.
That's true.
Yeah, right. So I mean, the title of the paper is "What if gasoline were $100 a gallon?" And the reason I bring this up is to just start thinking about the fact that high density power might not be easily available, and we should probably start thinking about it now. I briefly brought up vertical farms, and I like the idea. I'm really, actually, you mentioned earlier that PLM is all about efficiency, but what efficiency misses is both innovation and resiliency. So if you get
that's a good point.
Really efficient, you lose some resiliency and you lose out on innovation. So I'd like to start thinking about, okay, if we don't have dense packed power and we still need to do things, we still need to feed ourselves, we still want to go into town, we still want to meet with other people, how are we going to do this in a case where, in particular, where we don't have mobile power? So with stationary power, we can use trains, we can use mass transit, we can use e-bikes will require mobile power, but not nearly so much as a car will require.
Moving less weight, right?
But to tell you the truth, I want to get it's substantially bigger than that and get into using digital factory twins so that we can trade in virtual product information instead of physical product information. So instead of shipping products from, across the oceans, we start manufacturing those products locally. And this I would love to do another podcast which includes this, and I'm not really prepared for it right now, but the limitation on that will be the advanced manufacturing workforce. That if the goal is 99% of what we consume was either grown or manufactured within 1,000 miles or 1,000 kilometers of where we live, so limit 99% of transportation to less than 1,000 kilometers. Yeah. We can do this with vertical farms, and we can do it with digital factory twins, but we're going to need to educate the workforce to be prepared for it. Go ahead.
Well, and the MBAs of the world, who I oftentimes target in my comments, all of a sudden, it's not about finding the cheapest labor and moving everything there. It's rather, and look at the supply chain mess we have now, right? It's really more important about sustainability. Would be about buy local. Buy local would be your point about, I mean, we might engineer global, but you would want to manufacture as close as you could to the consumer.
Right.
That's where we go next, and we get sustainability and profits at the same time. So,
and this is the weekly conversation I have with Lagos, Nigeria. Is we can transmit knowledge, right? We can use the internet to move knowledge back and forth. In fact, that one's mostly about the metaverse. That conversation is mostly about the metaverse. So we no longer need to transport physical products. We can transmit the knowledge on how to manufacture those products, and quite frankly, we can market that. You can buy my knowledge, right?
Yep. So this is excellent. So the future of digital engineering is quite rich.
Yeah,
maybe even richer given all the challenges we have. And Patrick, it's been wonderful chatting with you, and I will look forward to that next conversation, maybe another 6 months or so.
Sure.
And let's make it a goal that you, Thom, and I do it together. I mean, Zoom is great,
right?
But I'm ready to get back together. So it's been wonderful chatting with you. And Thom, you got any last points?
Yeah, when we get together in the fall for the Digital Enterprise Society's meeting, we'll be in the Detroit area, I believe. So maybe we can do the next one of these late in the fall in person.
I think that's
right?
That's
for everybody's awareness. If you didn't see our change date, it's in November. It's like November 17th, if I remembered correctly. So it's a Thursday before Thanksgiving. So plan that, put it on your calendars, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. That would be great. Patrick, that's the date. We'll work on the topic, okay?
There you go.
That'll be perfect.
Patrick, we'd love to have you back again. You're a great guest. Thank you so much for joining us.
I enjoy doing it.
And thank you to everybody who listened. Join us every single week for more thoughts, ideas, and actionable information in and around product lifecycle management. The Digital Enterprise Society is the place for the exchange of ideas around digital manufacturing tools. Go check out our website at digitalenterprisesociety.org.
You've been listening to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Learn more about what you've heard here today at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Join us again next week for more connection without boundaries and creation without limits.